What up, guys? Big Bird. Some people don't understand what it takes to fab up a car. Some fab guys don't put the time needed into certain things when they're fabbing them. This is one of the things that I'm kind of referring to. When the car first came to me, it had a truck water pump on it, but it's got this accessory bracket here that's F-body spacing. So I had to buy an F-body water pump for the car. In turn, I needed to buy an F-body balancer and stuff for it. And he had already welded the bungs on the front cover, which you can see even with the underdrive balancer, there's not a chance in hell you were ever going to get that fitting or a fitting on that front cover. No way, not a chance. Same thing over here. Look at that. But anyways, that's what we're doing today. I'm going to pull the front cover off this thing. I got new bungs to weld new bungs on a cover. I don't know if I got any spare covers that are clean. I'm going to get one, clean one up, get it prepped and ready, and test fit it, try and figure out, which I'm waiting on fittings and lines so I can go ahead and start doing the drain lines, which in turn I need to get a serpentine belt, get the serpentine belt on it, make sure where I'm routing this isn't going to interfere with the belt and stuff, just all things you got to do. I'm going to get this front cover and stuff off here. I'm curious to see what the inside of this engine looks like when I get this cover off. I have a feeling I'm not going to be surprised whenever I see what's inside this engine. And pull the valve covers off of it because we're going to weld -10 fittings in the valve covers. And this thing, you know, like most of my stuff I say is stock bottom end junkyard stuff. But when you open them up and the insides of them look like this was a valve cover they cleaned. You can see where they wire brushed it. This one actually wasn't too bad. That must have came off of a different engine. But this one pretty much looks like it belongs on this thing. Supposedly they put pack 1218s in it. I can't really say that those look like pack 1218s. They kind of look like the stock valve springs, to be honest with you. But the inside of this thing is disgusting. When I pulled the intake manifold off of it, this was pinched. Let me see where I can find it. Yeah, right there you can see. They had just like pinched this gasket here. There was no way that was going to seal. It was actually right here, and it was kind of laid over like this and pinched. So that wasn't going to seal up. We're going to try and flip that gasket over, that O-ring over, and reuse it. And then some of these have already been kind of rolled where they weren't sealing up very good. So it's a good thing I pulled it off. Plus I needed to get the map sensor data off of it, and then I wanted to make sure all the bungs and stuff in the back of it and the bottom of it were all sealed up and all that. And then I'm actually going to pull the rails off and reposition the injectors because they were trying to like hide the injector connector, but honestly I think that looks worse than anything. And then if you need to service them or something, you can't get to them back there. They're a pain. So we're going to fix that, pull the rails off, reposition the injectors, get all that sealed back up. Looks like they could use some kind of spacer. They put some kind of washers or something underneath those to space them up. Maybe the injector was a little too tall. Honestly, it doesn't even look like the injector's sealing up right in the intake. So we're going to figure that out as well. And then my main thing was because I wanted to pull all this stuff off the firewall. That way I can tape the motor off and hopefully try and paint the firewall a little bit. I do notice that there's a big gaping hole right there in the firewall. Gonna have to do something with that. We may make a little patch for it. And then whenever we do the throttle pedal, because it doesn't have a throttle pedal in it currently, we'll figure out a new hole situation and stuff. But yeah, that's not gonna work. But yeah, so like I said, got some parts in the mail. We got our turbo blankets in the mail, so that's going to make that look a little nicer. They're not all clamped down. They're just sitting on there. We've got fittings coming for the feed lines. Got to get the lines made yet, and I've got lines and fittings coming for the drains. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing. Just kind of chipping away at it. This is one I had off the BK. This is in the wrong spot. It's not going to work with this balancer, and it definitely wouldn't have worked with the factory balancer anyways. So I've got another cover I've already got cleaned up, and going to try and find a couple spots, see if we can put a couple fittings in, and hopefully get this front cover situation sorted out so we can start making some return lines and keep this project moving. So I'm gonna grab a couple fittings and let's see if we can find a spot to put these where we're gonna have space. A couple dash 10s. There we go. They're not gonna be in the same spot. They're gonna have to be in different spots on this cover, mainly because of the low mount radiator, or the low mount alternator. And it needs, the way it comes off this low mount alternator, it appears that like the belt's going to come directly off of it, maybe just up a hair, and we're actually going to have to go through the belt with the return line, and we're going to end up putting a straight fitting on this side. So we're going to try and set it off side like that. It's going to just barely roll over the edge. That'll be okay, and it might even tilt out just a smidge. Should be right about there, and we should have enough room. I want it kind of like that. It is going to be relatively close to the balancer, yes, I know, but it's just kind of how the cookie crumbled with this one. We're kind of limited on space. This one you can see is actually really far inward, and we're going to be further out and a little bit further down, so that way it'll be kind of over here, and hopefully we'll just barely miss that bracket, and then we're going to loop up and into the drain down there. And over here, we're going to kind of try and angle it out, or not, I don't know. Honestly, I'll probably put it in the exact same spot on this side, and then we'll just run a 90 degree off here up to a 45 on the drain. That's probably what we'll do. And this one's going to be a little bit more difficult because it's got this lip here where this side doesn't. So this side, we're going to get down here, and then this side, probably going to try and just barely catch the edge of it, and then that way we can put the 90 degree fitting on it, and we may kick it out just a smidge. So let me get some holes drilled and see if we can burn in some new fittings here. I got my holes drilled, got my fittings, snap into place, nice little snug fit, and that one's straight. That one's got a little sideways cock to it. And then our balancer's on there. Then definitely can get this fitting on here. And good there. And the same goes with this one. Nice and out of the way. So should be good there. Get this pulled apart here, and we'll start mocking up this front cover. Got our fittings all welded on. I weld them on the inside, a little bit easier. Got them all welded on, and now I'm gonna spray a little like purple power or glass cleaner around it. I'm gonna try and force some compressed air up through the back side of it and make sure I don't have any leaks. Like I said, just give it a little spray around there, and then hopefully this one's good too. No leaks. Doesn't appear to have any bubbles blowing out of it. I don't have any leaks, so that's good. And I media blasted this one so I can paint it. Close it off real quick with some brake clean. And then we got the old infamous Van Sickle we're gonna paint it up with. And then I gotta check and see if I got a new front seal. And then once I get a seal put in it, I can put the new SFI balancer and stuff on it. And as you can tell, I kind of painted the front of the engine. It looks a little bit nicer now too. And it'll look even better whenever I put the front cover on. Not like you'll see it, but when you look down in the engine, you won't see a bunch of rusty stuff on the engine. Obviously, the frame's all rusty, but it'll just make the engine look a little bit nicer anyways. So we're going to get it painted, and then we'll pop the front seal out of it, because I don't want to get paint inside where that front seal area goes. But anyways, let me get this thing painted up real quick, and then we'll get this slapped on the motor and try and make these lines. Got one of our valve covers done the other day, cured in the poor man's powder coat, and got the other one here sitting on the bench. We got the hole drilled in it, so now all I got to do is clean up this surface here with acetone, clean this up with some acetone, and as you can tell, I grinded a little flat spot on the back side of it, kind of make it easier, maybe. That way I got a little bit better spot to get back in there. It was, without grinding that down, it was actually kicking the fitting sideways, so I went in and grind that down, and then make it a little easier to get back in there with my torch and get that welded. Like I said, I gotta get this cleaned up with some acetone. I always weld bungs on these, mainly because I'm trying to utilize the baffle that's inside of it. As you can see, there's that little hump right there. That's where the baffle starts and goes all the way down to the other hump there. Definitely want to use the baffle. You don't want to use the fill cap with the -10 in it, because it's just going to push fluid out of it or push oil out of it. And when you got a catch can sitting above some exhaust tubing and stuff, you know, more than likely he's probably not going to check that catch can very much. I'd rather not fill up and spill oil everywhere and make a mess. Same thing on the other side. I use the PCV hole and open it up, and then I weld the bung in on it. So utilizes the baffle on that side as well. But anyways, we'll get this cleaned up and we'll burn this in, and then we can get this one ready for paint. Once the front cover dries, we'll get it on. We'll start making these drain lines and just slowly chip away at this thing. All right, so we got that one all burned in, and that one's ready to go. I'll go through. I got to blow it out, get some of the metal shavings out. That one, when you try and drill the hole, since it's so close to the baffle, you can only drill a small hole into the top of this here. And then I've got to take my old carbide bit and waller that hole out so I can put that fitting down inside of it. And the fitting actually kind of sits off to the edge. As you can kind of see there, it kind of sits off to the edge of that deal. So there's a little gap right there that you got to fill in. But yeah, looks good. So now we got that one done, and then we can get it prepped and painted like the rest of the parts here, and start sealing the motor up. This one's already starting to flash. You can tell I used that satin black, and it's already starting to lose its gloss, where this one's still pretty glossy. But the good thing about that Van Sickle stuff is, man, it's so like durable, because it's meant for farm implement. So it's meant to be out in the sun and all that stuff. Granted, it is just like a single acrylic enamel paint, like single stage paint. But man, it works good, especially on like painting engine blocks. I love using it to paint engine blocks. If you want the best engine enamel paint, throw this on there. You won't be disappointed, I promise you. So we got the covers all painted. I'm just now getting around to torquing the front cover bolts. Got the gasket and everything on there. The new fittings down there. Put a new seal in it. And then we got the valve covers painted. Those turned out really good. And I'm telling you, that Van Sickle, that poor man's powder coat, that's where it's at. And then, yeah, so we're going to get this torqued down. We'll get the balancer put on, finalize the water pump, get everything tightened up there. That way the front accessory drive and everything's on it and ready to go. I still got to get the proper tensioner for this accessory spacing. The tensioner that's on the pump was the one that was on the old pump, and it was a truck spacing, so it doesn't line up right. So I got to get a new tensioner for that. I got new valve cover gaskets and grommets for the valve covers. We'll get those put on. I got a new valley cover for this because I don't want him to, especially since the car is going to not have a hood on it most of the time, more than likely. I got a flat plate to cover up the knock sensor holes. That way it doesn't get, debris and stuff just sitting down in there, because that rubber grommet will get bad, and then you'll get stuff in the engine, and I don't want to mess with that. I don't want him to have to deal with it. So I got a new cover to put on there as well. And then once we get all that done, like I said, we can start working on mocking up the radiator, making mounts for the radiator, and trying to plumb the radiator itself. And after I get this all tightened up with the front cover and everything on it, water pump and all that, then we'll do the oil drain lines for the turbo returns, and then that'll be done. And then we'll work on trying to fit up the radiator and getting that plumbed. And then we need to get the car up in the air and start working on the fuel system. Drain lines made, and it's going to be tricky because the one on the driver's side is going to have to go through the serpentine belt. I don't normally like to do that, but at this point, I don't think I'm really going to have a choice. I may end up having to change it a little bit. Also, another thing, with it being so close to the balancer, they're not going to be real easy to change, especially the one on the driver's side, because it's between the balancer and the alternator. So to be able to pull this one off, you may end up having to pull the alternator off. So you can tell it's like super close to the bracket, and it's going to be really close to the balancer as well. So if you were to ever have to pull the line off, I mean, it's going to be virtually impossible to get a wrench down in there between the two to try and get it loose. Unless you had like a big line wrench or something that was really long, you could slide down through there. But it's going to be kind of strategic in how you are able to assemble it. Usually whenever I do it, I try and set it up to where things are kind of modular. Like you don't have to just, a lot of people will assemble things and it's like once it's assembled, taking the thing apart is almost impossible. So I like to try and, when I'm fabbing stuff, keep in mind the fact of like serviceability. I want to be able to service something like, if for some reason I got to take the front cover off, I want to be able to do this without having to pull everything else off, or vice versa. You know, if the manifold has to come off or the turbo has to come off or something, you know, like I try and make it to where everything has its place and it's really hard to like mess it up going back together and stuff. I'm actually going to put some rib nuts in the frame and I'm going to put isolators, these little isolator P-clamps to hold the drain lines in their position so they don't move around. This one's pretty good. But I'm still going to put a little deal on it. And then this one I'm going to put, it's kind of like the way that's angled to kind of put it in a weird spot. So, but yeah, we're going to put these P-clamps on them, try and hold them out of the way, and then just make it look a little nicer and whatnot. So I still got to drill a hole over there, put rib nut there, rib nut there. Once that's all secured, I'll go through. This one I can go ahead and tighten up the drain line all together. This one I'm not going to tighten up just yet. Mainly because at this point I'm gonna have to kind of half assemble everything, make sure the belt and everything clears, and then pull it back off, tighten it up, and then I can put everything back on. So like I said, it's kind of strategic. You know, it's gonna be fabbing stuff up. You just constantly are putting things on, pulling things off, putting things on, test fitting back and forth. You know, there's a lot of trial and error and a lot of test fitting. You don't just put it in, one fab, you're done, out the door, ready to go. You know, like it's constantly, you're pulling things in and out. Back and forth many times to try and make sure everything comes in and out easily, gets fabbed up right, nothing's in the way. Just a lot of like little steps that you have to constantly take when you're doing these kind of things. At least that's just how I do it anyways. But I'm going to get these lines all fabbed up, get the front part of the engine accessory drive done, and kind of see how everything lays out. And then that'll prep us for the next step of what's coming. That will prep us for what's coming next on this part of the build. Kind of just put the intake manifold back on because I wanted to get the breather lines remade. So we got those all redone. All that's plumbed out real nice. Looks good. And we got the valve covers. They're all bolted on and down. And then I've got the fuel lines made for the regulator. Got one on this side coming over 180 and into here, and then we've got straight out of here, it's got a small loop up into this side of the rail. So now all we'll have to do is run a line from the filter and or pump, whatever's underneath the car, run it up to a Y block, and then Y into the back of the rails, and then we'll have one return line running back, and then that part of the fuel system will all be plumbed up, and we'll be good to go there. Yeah, so we got the cover, balancer, everything's on. Still got to get a tensioner. Still got to get the right tensioner for it. And then we'll get the belt routing and stuff all done. Got to wire up the alternator and stuff. There's tons of stuff to do, but we're just making small progress here. Just tedious work. This stuff is time consuming. That's where the money goes in a lot of this. Yes, there's a lot of money in parts. Granted, we're doing the cheaper route of parts, but putting a car together is time consuming. And that's where all the labor and stuff goes into the builds like this. You know, when you're building it pretty much from scratch or having to fix somebody else's work, it gets time consuming. But we've got the drain lines all made. Got those with the P-clamps, you know, out routed away from everything. And then it's going to clear the serpentine belt as well. We already test fitted that. But yeah, just chipping away at it. But that's going to do it for today's video, guys. Another step in the right direction for Project Big Bird here. And we're just slowly chipping away at it. The plan for this is to have this car running hopefully in time for Streetcar Takeover Kansas City, which will be April 11th. No, I take that back. It's not April 11th. It's like April 20th or something. The opening day for our new track is April 11th. But it'll be late April. So I've got a little bit of time, but I've still got a ton of work to do. And we'll save that for another video. But thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget, comment, like, subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.